Right, a bit of help with the values worksheet, so the one where you're having a look at which goods and services are provided by the Amazon, to look at how important it is. So in images sheet number 1, you've got, again, a whole series of pictures. Some of them you might recognise immediately, and some of them perhaps you're not quite sure on. So this first one in the left hand corner, I don't know if you know what they are, but they are, I was trying to zoom in, they're cocoa beans. So without the rainforest we wouldn't have chocolate. So incredibly important, especially for anything like me. I don't know what I'd do about chocolate someday, so very, very important in terms of their supply of cocoa beans. This one is, she's got a fish on a stick there, which has obviously been barbecued, and she's having a nice eat of it. Again, she's meant to be a tribes person. So again, tribes will rely on the Amazon for their source of food, but also for local people, it could be their source of fish if they're quite far inland, which gives them a source of protein as well. So again, they can fish from the Amazon River in the rainforest, and therefore they get a supply of protein. This one here, you can see a carcass of, I'm assuming, a cow hanging there. It does give us a supply of meat, so obviously at the moment that could be illegal cattle ranching, but again, for indigenous people, they would get their natural source of meat from the rainforest. They do eat things like monkeys, whether you agree or disagree, they've done it for hundreds of years as a source of protein for them as well. So yeah, meat products from the Amazon are also quite important. These over here, again, not sure if you've ever seen them in this format before. They're coffee beans growing on a coffee plant or coffee tree, I don't know what you call it actually. But yeah, coffee beans don't grow that dark brown colour. They start off a greeny colour, they ripen to red, and when they're red they're picked and then they're roasted to become that nice brown colour that we associate with coffee. So again, coffee beans are mostly grown in that part of the world in tropical environments. Again, without those we wouldn't have our morning coffee. So again, lots of people rely on that industry. So here we've got, in terms of housing, this is meant to represent the people that actually live there. To some people it is their home, whether they live here on some sort of like semi-aquatic house on the side of a river, or whether they actually live in the rainforest itself. It is home to lots of people, hence its importance. This one over here, so we're going, this is more of a service, isn't it? Don't know if you can work out what this is, but that is meant to be the river, and that is a dam. Dams have several uses, and we mentioned these when we did rivers. First of all, you put in a dam, you then create a reservoir at the back, which is like a large lake essentially. And that can be a supply of fresh water for people. So that could be perhaps a lifeline for some, fresh water supply. But especially in this one here, what they've done is they've put a dam across, and over here you've got some sort of buildings. It's a hydroelectric power plant. The Amazon is a humongous river. It's got an enormous amount of energy and potential energy. They can harness that by putting in dams, and they create a nice green source of energy for, again, local people to use, or for them to sell. I was going to say perhaps a better way of using their natural resources, but sadly by putting in dams you can flood large areas, which again can damage ecosystems, but perhaps less damaging than things like cattle ranching. This one's just meant to sort of say in general, where you've got a lot of rainfall in a rainforest, it will create large river systems, and that large river system is in a lifeline for lots of people in lots of ways. Be that transport by boat, be that using it for fresh water, be that using it for fishing, all sorts of things. So again, that's quite an important lifeline, especially for people living there. And then over here you've got different herbs and spices. So as much as they will get foodstuffs from the forest, they'll also get things like herbs and spices. And then if you go on to the second image sheet, again we've got some more, this is more services on this side. So first of all, forest, jungles, trees, plants produce the oxygen we breathe. They're the lungs of the earth. We destroy them, we destroy ourselves. So we've mentioned this in some of our virtual sessions. The rainforest is incredibly important. It does create a lot of the oxygen that we breathe. And this one over here, it also creates a lot of rainfall, which is important for local people and local ecosystems too. And you can see down here there's a little farm at the bottom. So for any ecosystem or any body living in the rainforest, the fact that the forest itself creates rainfall is important. So an important service is the actual rain creating section. This is just meant to represent sort of the animals and the biodiversity that are there. We might not see it as important to us as such. You know, if a species were to die out, how would it affect our everyday life? Well, I don't know, I suppose it probably wouldn't affect us in our everyday lives at all. But incredibly sad to think that our damaging habits could actually cause species to become extinct. And there are many, many organisations who know how important it is to make sure we don't have that impact on our environment and our wildlife. Incredibly sad if we didn't care about that. And again, you've got some bird species here, so be it mammals or birds or reptiles or whatever it is, it's really important that we keep that biodiversity and we try and make sure that those species survive. These guys down here, I don't know if you can just about see on this tiny image, but they're looking at and measuring a log. So for lots of people in the Amazon, the trees are the actual source of income for them, so logging industries are quite big business. It obviously creates an income for them, which is important for the country as a whole, but it also means that we get wooden products. So, you know, you want a nice mahogany table, for example, in your living room, chances are it's probably come from some sort of rainforest environment, unless it's sustainably sourced, in which case it might have been selectively grown, but a lot of the time they're not. And even things like, you know, cheap IKEA furniture will be made of sort of the wood chip that comes out of the byproduct of logging. So any bits that can't be used as solid wood will then go into chipboard and be used in cheap furniture. So we rely on the logging industry in a way for some of our furniture. Again, you can buy sustainably sourced furniture and it not come from a rainforest, but sadly I suspect a lot of it does. And then in terms of our big world cycles, and again, you don't need to know much about these at GCSE level, but at A level these become very, very important, and you do need to know roughly what they are. So in terms of our rainforest water cycle, we've mentioned this already, the actual rainforest creates its own water and its own water cycle. So to get heavy daily convectional rain, we need water to evaporate, and obviously it's very, very hot because it's near the equator, so it does create lots of evaporation, which we then get a large amount of rainfall. Trees intercept it, some reaches the ground, which means it's then taken up by some of the trees, and the whole process happens all over again. So again, that as a service is quite important. And also the nutrient cycle. And again, if you're living in the rainforest and you're a tribes person, actually getting the nutrients back into the soil and back into the trees and then back into the soil again is quite an important process so that they can grow their crops to survive. And again, farmers in the Amazon would also be conscious of this cycle too, although sadly they tend to destroy it. But then they'll see the effects of that, which is the permanent damage to the rainforest, which is very sad. So yeah, for nutrients to end up back in the soil so that trees can then grow again, we need to have enough decaying material to put those nutrients back into the soil for them to then be used again. It's a nice little continuous cycle. Of course, the problem is we get involved, we cut them all down, and then we don't let it decay back into the soil. We completely over abuse the soil by planting lots of cash crops, things like soya or palm oil, for example, and then they take the product, they sell it off somewhere else, and nothing ends up decomposing and going back to the soil. And again, that means our soil's then really, really poor, nothing will grow, and the land can sometimes be bare and barren and will never grow again. So all sorts of very important things. In your table, you need to go and decide which ones you think are products that are created by the rainforest. So something like the coffee beans, for example, are a product we buy from the rainforest. So put it under the, is it products, I think it is? Let's have a look. Can't remember what the term is. Oh, goods, isn't it? Yes, that'll go under goods, wherever your little table is. There we go. So coffee beans will go under goods, for example, or fish. And then in services, you might want to put the fact that the rainforest creates enough oxygen for the whole planet. So that's a service that it gives us. It can offer people in the environment rather than just something that can be consumed. So yeah, I'd put oxygen in that one. Then you're going to add lots of other things to this table. So pathway 1 and 2, definitely use the next couple of slides to add some extra things. Pathway 3 and 4, by all means have a look through as well. There's a bit about pharmaceuticals and finding new medicines from the rainforest as well. And then you've both got pathway 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, a video to watch, which again gives you more information about goods and services that the rainforest gives us. I'm hoping by the end of this section you'll understand why it's so important that we don't destroy the Amazon rainforest, and why we're very much more conscious of what we're doing to it and a human's effect on it. Obviously, any questions, give me a shout.